Hi, I'm Philo and welcome back to another Diabolical Community VOD review. Today I've got a very special episode because this VOD was sent in to me by Y2Jake, a phenomenal community member, someone I've really enjoyed chatting to lately about content creation. Podcast creator. You can see he's repping the Smiley Blue podcast in his avatar here. I was recently on the Smiley Blue podcast, so if you want to hear me talk about Quake with Y2Jake, GMT, and Zorak War for about an hour and a half, I'm going to link that episode in the description of this video. Cool podcast. I recommend you check it out if you're into Diabolical. So, we're going to be watching this game, and I already started doing a review of this match, and I had to kind of stop and restart it because Jake is very new to AFPS, so I came into the game, I had certain expectations about what level he would be playing at, and he was playing way above them. I'm really impressed by the game he was playing here, and so yeah, I've had to shift gear a little bit from what I was expecting. This might actually be the most advanced game I've watched so far in the series, and that's a real credit to Jake. I think he's doing a great job. But there is still a lot to talk about as well. So Skybreak, you spawn here, you want to get red armor. I've seen some people be cheeky and go into Mega as well, but just play it safe in general is my advice. Especially off these spawns. Don't give away anything you don't need to off the spawn. And comes out, listens for his opponent. You can kind of peek out for an exit shot. Probably better to have the pincer out there because they're going to be leaving the room. Maybe. I don't know, I feel like the way you hear a move there, you can be pretty confident you're going to hit the pincer in the back. And now it's set up for this red, and you've just got to wait and see where your opponent's coming from. I like that Jake sits above and waits to let his opponent come in. A little bit iffy on the use of that slow field. It felt a bit like a desperation move. I don't think it really changed much. Now you just don't have a slow field. If you can back away from this would be pretty good. Your opponent's screaming, so actually I like that you kind of come around and maybe look for a shot. And yeah, beautiful. You waited down low, you knew where your opponent was going, you cleaned up on the damage you got. Really, really nice way to start a game here. Always happy to get the first frag. And, Enagma... I don't know if his name's Enigma or Enagma. I'm going to call him Enagma. Enagma commits really heavily to just picking up that yellow. It's going to mean you don't have much armor, and it means a situation like this is scary. So what I would like to see there, instead of just walking backwards, right? Because Enagma had a really easy rocket there because you were in that doorway. So just moving with a little bit more intention and a little bit more awareness of where you're easy to hit, that's kind of where you're going to get an advantage, or at the very least not be in a disadvantage in that situation. And already you should be starting to notice, sorry, just let me mute this on my end, I just had Jake in my ear. You should be starting to notice already that Enagma is keen on getting in on these items, right? He's going to dive him, he's going to have a presence there. And so that's something you can start to think about and to use against your opponent, or at least to kind of, inform how you approach it. So awkward spawn, dropping down is always really rough because once you're at the bottom of the map, you have nowhere to go. So you probably could have actually stayed up around near rockets and spammed out a bit more. But again, that's really hard because after your opponent gets mega, then they can always back away to red and you can't. But then, you're sitting up there, you can get yellows. It's, a much safer way to play is sitting up top, but I can't necessarily say if it's the right or the wrong play, because there's a lot more going on in the duel. But now you're in this awkward situation where you're here and you have nothing, but you don't want to give away this red. And I think you're pretty fortunate to pick it up before he gets into that room. You've hit good damage, and so I guess that's kind of the realization of what I was saying, right? If you sit up top and play it safe, you don't have to make that tough call of do I have to commit to this red with nothing? You would have something, you would have yellows, you would be in a fairly defensible position where if he wanted to push you, you could mess him up, and then if you respawn on that red, you have a much bigger advantage. So you've just left yourself in an awkward situation where because you died before that mega, it felt like there was only one thing you were able to do. You always do have the option to play passive and to chill out, but especially on this map, it's rough because, if you take too much damage, if your opponent just gets really clean items, it really does turn into a snowball map. They can get you into a really bad cycle of just dying and then respawning on items and you feeling like you have to commit. So, you've cleaned up a frag there in a good way. Beautiful pincer shot. And yeah, great readout of where he's coming from. Enagma probably needs to be a little bit more careful that they're not just bleeding off damage in weird places. You're thinking about this red next, which is good, but not only thinking about the red, you're actually looking for him, looking for this exit damage off of his yellow, which again, perfect, if you're actually picking up the red. Now you have to be careful, right? You've swung out a really long way here and left that red armor open. I don't know the exact time of it, but it's something to be aware of. And you can see how quickly something like leaving a red up can actually come around to bite you, right? Like, you let him get into the position in that room. He actually pushed forward in a way that you weren't expecting. And then as you drop down, he perfectly anticipated you. So right now, you know, he isn't healthy, but he has more armor than you. He has so little health that it doesn't end up mattering. But like, if he sneaks away there and gets some HP, it's a pretty huge armor advantage. And again, we can see, you know, Enagma is not afraid to get on these items. So you really need to start to think, you know, I am playing an item diver. I'm playing someone who's going to get down, who's going to get on top of these items, and, you know, just be prepared for that. And this is a really good way to be prepared for it on this map. You know, red, you have no armor, but you know he doesn't have an LG, you know he doesn't have a pincer. So yeah, absolutely, farm that damage from above with the rockets. It's good to see. Again, dropping down here, I think is a little bit bold. Because he does have those rockets, and again, it's one of those questions of, once you're down low, how do you get back into a good position? And the answer was, you didn't do it in that room, right? You couldn't come through that way because of, you know, like, he had the rockets. He actually, did he have an advantage? As far as the actual stack goes, like, I'm not going to make a call on the exact stack there. It's, well, he took 100, but he took red. I don't know. It's dicey. If you came through from the top here, you could have been here and he would have had to kind of push into your position. Whereas if you're down there, it's like a scrappy fight to get into a strong position, you know? So this is a little bit ballsy, you know, like, you're rushing into that mega late. And this is a really common thing to see with players. If your timing isn't super good, and if you're not aware of, you know, like, the exact second that the item's coming up on, I tend to time items to 5-second intervals, right? I'll round up or round down. So if a mega's coming back at 53, in my head I'll be saying 55, and sometimes that means you rush into a room to, like, you know, try and get a bit of cheeky exit damage or something, and you're too late. And so there's no chance of you making the damage, and you just risk, for one thing, telling your opponent where you are, and potentially risk taking a really, like, kind of cheeky pincer angle or something if you're rushing in too heavily. So I think that's a situation where you didn't want to look at the mega at all, and just having slightly better timing, like slightly more precise timing, could have informed that a little bit better. But yeah, so right now it's scary, right? Because your opponent's just gotten red, they've just gotten mega, they have everything. So this is a great place to be. I don't think you need to rush out here quite so quickly, but you're lucky that he didn't have the pincer or something out. You don't need to close this gap, okay? You don't have to be afraid to sit up the top of the map here, because that spam fight can really swing either way. And if you pull back towards, like, the area, like, not standing on the yellow armor, but just around that staircase and stuff, if Enagma wants to push you, you can deal a lot of damage. If you're here, it's a little bit more iffy. And, you know, this is a great position to get fragged in, right? If I see my opponent standing here when I feel like I have an advantage, there are so many options for how I can drop down, for how I can spam rockets around the corner. If I'm, you know, on this side of the room from you, right, I always have this teleporter so I can get back into a strong position faster, whereas you would have to either, you know, then try and come through the teleporter into me or take the lift up. So once you're in this position, I think it's a scary, scary place to be, especially with an opponent that you've seen is prepared to be aggressive. I like backing away towards the red here, not really knowing when it is. And again, you know, a little bit of uncertainty around the timing, right? Like, you didn't see when it was picked up. No player in the world, that's not even a timing issue, that's just kind of a general awareness issue, right? Like, no player in the world knows the exact time that red armor was, just from how those situations played out. The best you could do was guess, and you're playing an opponent who's showing that they're prepared to dive the shit out of these items. So probably you would have been better off standing, like, away from it, spamming towards it, trying to listen to it and pick up a sound. Oh man, almost got pushed off of that mega, but you know, it works out in the end. And with that mega, like, you've got a lot of stack to play with. The important thing is you don't take a pincer or something. And even, you know, when you think about looking towards that doorway there, what are you going to catch going through that doorway? I think the most likely thing to happen there is that you eat a pincer, or eat some, you know, like spam plasma or something. You're not going to get the shaft damage there. So just play a little bit safer, play a little bit tighter around these corners. This blue is coming. And once you have it, you definitely have an advantage to assert at the next red. You know, don't give him the opportunity to hit the pincer shot and put you back on the back foot. Again, I would mirror everything I just said on that situation. And you've left it a little bit too late to get into this red. And Enagma, right? They're timing these items really precisely. and they're not afraid to show up for them. So not a red you needed to give up. You know, you were never going to gain anything much from peeking into the room the way you did, and now you've just given an Agma a huge in back to the map. Again, just having to... Did an Agma not get that mega? That was weird. That was an odd little situation there. They got there really quickly. So yeah, again, I like this. I don't think an Agma needed to dive in there. That was just asking to take a lot of damage, and it's important that you hit the shots, right? If your opponent gets greedy and pushes you in an item like that, mess them up. Love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. Okay, so again, you're in the situation. You're at red, you have nothing, and you're feeling like you've got to commit, and you've played it safe. You know, you haven't taken damage. You haven't put yourself in positions where you're kind of unnecessarily risking taking damage, which is really good. It's so critical that you're able to do that. And here's this bloody shotgun crosshair, okay? Jake owned up. In my last community cast, I called out someone for using this crosshair for how fucking bonkers it is. Jake owned up and said he's the guy who actually created this. Quick side note in the middle of my detailed duel analysis. This is good. You have to run here. Really, really good rocket damage. You know, you've made an Agma regret his decisions. And I don't mind the commitment to stand. You know, you knew you were going to get a good rocket through that doorway. Just unfortunate you don't actually get the frag there. You've done really good damage. Again, I'm surprised an Agma lets you take that so easily. Like, they don't have loads of stack, but they definitely had the weapons to like spam it out a bit or something. Like, they were in that position already. It's weird they weren't putting more pressure on your jump across to Mega there to me. But again, like, when an Agma is leaving things, is leaving windows open for you, you're definitely taking them, which is good. And again, this is the situation where I feel like, especially without a pincer, it's hard to get the situation you want here. And where there was a red open for you, instead you push for this frag. You already have the lead, and now you've lost the red and you're at a disadvantage. So, if you'd have gone for red there, I think you would have had time to get red and then back to Mega, and maybe even yellow as well, depending on like where an Agma was. So, you know, it's good to get a frag on the board, but I think it actually puts you in a worse position overall. And it's a really hard thing to have like the big picture thinking to realize that. But I don't know, it's such an awkward situation to poke your head out and look for damage, especially without the pincer around, you know, when you think your opponent's at yellow. This is good timing. This is the kind of pressure I want to see from an Agma here. Really making you pay for picking that Mega up, which is good. And now, you know he's going to come for this. I like that being a bit more cautious, but you're in a position where you just, you know, like, if you don't make the shot, you've got to run away. So again, I think there are a lot of options for how you position on red there. The way you positioned was pretty safe, but it also means that if you don't hit your shot, he just gets red for free. Again, you know, I tend to like being positioned above the red, but again, it can be a dangerous place, especially if you're like past this doorway and they come around the corner when you don't expect them. It can be very hard to leave the situation. Cool, you sneak away with that. The pressure comes out from an Agma, but just not able to punish you for it. And so now, yeah, you really want to spend this. Again, I think fighting around in that little corner, in that little elbow, you're not really fighting for anything as far as I'm concerned. Like, you're not going to get the frag there. And this seems a little odd to me. You probably could have stayed in Mega Room and kept the pressure on rather than backing away for the split. And actually, you know, you can see how important, like, if you were a few steps over there, if you were just like a few steps back or doing that move a few seconds earlier or a few seconds later, you probably could have blocked him out from that red. But instead, he's stolen it away when there was really no need for that to happen. You know, he did have a bigger stack, but you were there first and you were coming from a position where you were potentially, you know, putting pressure on him. And overall, I think there have been a few situations here where you've chosen to take weaker positions, or, you know, you've been a little bit unsure about either when an item's coming or where he's going to be positioned, or you've gotten a little bit greedy, and it's meant that you've ended up in a weaker position when you needed to be somewhere. So, again, it's good that you've got such a good time on this red. Yellow rather. I'm impressed how confident you've been to come around and take it. But when it comes to this pressure, right, it feels like Anagma's the one who's actually, making all this pressure, making all these attacks, and you're just left trying to defend yourself, which is never a good place to be, right? At some point in a duel, you've got to be the one with the initiative, and this is really awkward. Good to make that second shotgun blast as he comes across. If you don't do that, and you take more damage, you're just dead there. Wouldn't recommend the shotgun on the exit unless you're very, very confident, right, with how that shotgun's going to connect. It's a good way to take a lot of damage because you just have to stand in the most predictable place and there's no room for you to dodge. And again, you're going to be in an awkward spot here. Anagma's chosen to come into this room in the weakest possible way, and that gives you a chance to feed him off. So again, really important that you capitalize. And you can see, as far as I'm concerned, you could see that was the wrong thing for him to do and that you could punish it, which again is so important. But yeah, I would just like to see a few more situations where you're pushing in and making these entrances and making this entrance damage. You can't let yourself get bullied with the blaster like this. Anagma gets away with so much. So much. Devastating. Alright, this Mega's going to be key. He wants to come pressure. When is this Mega? I really feel like this Mega's now, but maybe I'm wrong. Did it get taken? Man, it's really hard casting these games without sound. Just gonna say, I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing too much work here, but it's really hard to cast these games without sound. Okay, let me go back a little bit. I hate doing this in these reviews, but let me go back a little bit, right? So he's stolen Mega, okay? And again, yeah, once you're dropped down, he's looking to just push in, and he makes a really, really good push, and even though you hit phenomenal exit damage, and, phenomenal defensive damage, he's just able to push through because you went to a spot where players are able to push, right? And it's so hard because you don't want to get stuck in that room, but similarly, you don't want to just give up a frag, and this is certainly going to be another frag here. This is really good spawn pressure. Mega's going to come up. Tough decision here if you actually try and pressure it. You've made good damage as you've died, but it's not really going to amount to anything with this red up. Like you get away, but he also gets away. He's going to have a yellow armor. He's not going to be in too bad of a position at all. I don't know why he jumps forward there. That's just asking for you to farm him with LG. Really, really nice. Glad to see you clean that up. Oh, and there goes VLC. Hold on. Alright, so my VLC crashed. Apparently it does not want me to see the end of that game, but I'm pretty sure that was it, right? He's just going to get the OG frag, and then that would be that. Really nice game. Like I said, Jake, for someone who's still really new to AFPS, it's really impressive. I'm watching it, and I'm not seeing huge mistakes. I'm not seeing, massive blunders that I need to see corrected. I'm seeing small details that are adding up over the game, which is really good, right? But that also makes it harder to talk about. I think a lot of the things are a bit more subtle. I can't point to the way you move in this fight, or the way you move here, or the way you move there. Like I called out during the game, dropping to that OG position can be really scary. If someone feels like they have an advantage, it can be really easy for them to push you there, especially as you're dropping, or kind of as you're landing, especially if they think your back is going to be to them, because you're moving towards that shaft, right? One of my favorite places to catch people on this map. Overall, I think you need to think really carefully about the rocket position next to Mega, because it's a really great position, and I think there were times when you dropped away to the lower level when you didn't need to, when actually being in that position, right, you're going to hold on to a lot more. You're not going to be in the best spot. You have a yellow behind you, where your opponent has a red and potentially a blue armor as well. But if the alternative is dying, then yeah, you definitely want to stay somewhere you can stay alive and get the items you can, and then think about catching your opponent, either as they're taking the red or maybe a bit on the exit. But you can do that in a way where you then are in position for Mega, right? So I think across the board, your play might have been a bit too item to item to item to item to item, rather than thinking about the position you would be in after the item and how that would relate to the next item. But like I said, it's subtle, and it's hard to point to one thing and be like, you should have done this instead. I think dropping away from that rocket position is probably the biggest thing that stood out to me, and a few places around the red where you could have just stood in a slightly different spot or moved in a slightly different way, and your setup would have been much stronger. You kind of let him sneak into positions and, sneak onto reds, especially reds that you didn't need to give him. Your timing was pretty good, but there were a few times when you were like a second or two off, and it really mattered. And that's not to say that you have to time to the second, but sometimes you just need to be in a safer position if you have a bit of uncertainty around the time. But yeah, like I said, this was a really good game. I was really impressed, and I actually had to start recording again because I underestimated what I was going to see from you. So yeah, well done, Jake. Thank you so much for sending it in. I would love to see more in the future, and that goes for everyone as well. If you have a game you want me to talk about, a game you've played, a game you've seen on stream or in a tournament, send me the details of the VOD. You can find me on Discord, on Reddit, or you can send me an email. My email address is in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've been Phylum, and I cannot wait until the next video.